This is the Brave New Coin Crypto Conversation, hosted by Andy Pickering.
Hi everyone, Andy Pickering here. I'm your host and welcome to the Crypto Conversation, a Brave New Coin podcast where we talk to the people building the future in the Bitcoin, blockchain and cryptocurrency space. My guest today is Les Borsai. Les is the Chief Strategy Officer at Wave Financial Group. And Les is getting deeper and deeper into the wonderful world of NFTs. We're going to talk about all this today. Hey, welcome to the show, Les.
I appreciate it, Andy. Thanks for having me.
It is a pleasure. And I love that we were just talking before we started recording. And I love that, Les, without you, I think, knowing too much about me, within me saying 2 or 3 sentences, you were quickly able to identify what part of the world I'm from.
I really thought I would do a little better because you got to remember I missed twice, sadly, but I did get on the third one.
Yes, indeed. So, and well, I should ask then. So, we'll get you to introduce yourself in a second. So, where are you from yourself?
I grew up, I was born in Los Angeles, and I'm kind of one of those rare beings that kind of has never left. I mean, definitely different parts of Southern California, but Los Angeles.
What gives a born and bred native LA guy the ability to quickly distinguish between New Zealanders, our Aussie cousins, and our further flung South African cousins? Because South Africa, Australia, and New Zealand are all quite geographically apart, but we all play rugby together, which is how those 3 nations are more traditionally linked. However, LA is kind of outside of that picture.
Well, I mean, I do know a little bit about rugby. I remember when I was working kind of on some mobile initiatives, I went to an IRL event in Hong Kong. So that was quite enlightening. But the simple answer to that question is, I grew up, well, I didn't grow up, I busted into the music business and have traveled kind of extensively through Australia, worked with someone from South Africa. I actually think I dated someone from South Africa when I was younger, and was friends with people from New Zealand. So, I mean, I think it's just the experience of spending time with people from those different areas and regions. And I've always kind of been sensitive to accents for some reason. I think it's because my parents had really thick Hungarian accents, and I ran away from them. So I don't know. I guess that's my superpower. I can identify accents.
I love it. All right. Well, let's get the full introduction then, Les. So we know you're from LA, and I guess your parents' Hungarian background. But yeah, please introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about, I guess, your backstory and introduction into crypto, blockchain, NFTs, all that good stuff.
Well, I suppose one way to look at it is we have a company now that has about 27 employees, and I guess by the end of the year, we'll have 50. And every single one of those came from finance. I am the sole guy that kind of didn't. So my background started in Anaheim. I was born in Gardena, which is kind of Los Angeles proper, but my family moved me to Anaheim near Disneyland. And I left home kind of at a very young age. I left at 16 and got involved in rave culture pretty quickly. And that turned into bringing over DJs and rave artists from Europe and England. And that ended up being a concert promotion job. So my kind of history, or, the starting of my music career, kind of launched just from being silly and throwing warehouse parties. But then I ended up at 22 years old at MCA Records, heading up tour marketing for the company. And then I ended up working in the Silicon Valley, and my career kind of progressed to eventually managing artists and working in different kinds of collaborative efforts with technology and artists, early iPhone apps and licensing and IP licensing. And in 2013, because I was on the brink of all of these technology breakouts, I started hearing about Bitcoin. It was $200 a coin. I didn't want to spend $200. So I was convinced I could find the next Bitcoin, and I started going deep in Reddit and all of these things that are super social. It's quite a long story, Andy. I hope I don't bore you. But
I love that you thought, everyone's like $200 for a Bitcoin. That's ridiculous. But
yeah, so
keep going.
So I ended up discovering Ripple. This kid had a wallet, one of the first Ripple wallets in 2013, and I ended up becoming an advisor to Ripple. From that, I invested in the Ethereum presale. Didn't know much about technology, but somehow I muddled downloading a JSON wallet, and got to buy Ethereum for 50 cents or however much it was in the presale. And then kind of continued to go down that rabbit hole of the first protocols and DAOs and things like that. And then got together with a guy named David Seymour and Borsai, who both came from finance, and just really believed there'd be an institutional use case for cryptocurrency. And we built a company called Wave Financial. So that's kind of the fast history, cramming it all together.
Yeah, very nice. And well, I'm very excited to talk NFTs with you, Les. But just before we do that, I can't help myself. I've got and look, this was, I think, one of the top lines on your bio when I was just doing a bit of prep for our conversation today. And maybe this is an exaggeration, because, there's nothing wrong with talking yourself up. And your bio, that's what you're supposed to do on the resume. But it said something like, Les introduced rave culture to LA, something like that, which hyperbole maybe. But so you mentioned throwing warehouse parties. And the reason I'm interested in this, Les, is because that's my background as well. I imagine you and I were probably roughly similar vintage. So, in the 90s here in New Zealand, yeah, I was throwing warehouse parties, DJing, and bringing, I guess, rave artists, mostly from the US, not from the US, from the UK, sorry, out to New Zealand. And it sounds like you were doing something similar. So look, we won't spend too much time reminiscing, but let's reminisce for a couple of minutes. Yeah. What were you up to?
So it's interesting because there actually is crossover into what I'm doing today. So in 1988, which was really kind of before the whole Summer of Love thing took hold here. In Los Angeles, it really kind of kicked off in, 89 and 90. In 88, the first warehouse parties I threw, they actually weren't dance music. They were more along the lines of the heavy metal that was happening in Hollywood. But the music changed. And there was one other group of folks out here doing kind of DJ rave style music, and it was a thing called Alice's House, and we were doing it at the same time in Orange County, and we got together with those folks. Well, one of them, there was a guy named Randy Moore and another guy named Kool-Aid, and we got together with Kool-Aid and kind of took the show on the road and did it in Los Angeles. But what I had a pretty good knack at was kind of reaching out and connecting. So what it ultimately became was taking this core concept of literally using a warehouse and throwing a carnival inside it into something that was more commercial. And I created a partnership with a company called Avalon Attractions. They would go on to become Live Nation. And what I did is I brought over bands. The first bands were like Enjoy, The Shaman, Stereo MCs, The Farm. I think Moby was early performances. Obviously, he was American. Primal Scream, on the Screamadelica record. And that was through a relationship with Warner. I know all of these names are resonating with you. So
Les, they are. And look, man, if you're kind of the first guy to bring, the Shaman, Enjoy, Stereo MCs, and a few years later, Primal Scream and the Screamadelica period, that does make you the godfather of rave culture in LA. I'm honored to talk to you, Les.
Well, I'll just say this. You don't have to take my word for it, because like that concept of making yourself look bigger on a bio, it's never really felt very good to me. But, the Primal Scream guys actually mentioned it in their book. And there's a guy named Simon Reynolds who...
I know who Simon is, yes.
So if you look at Generation Ecstasy, he also articulates it. So take their word for it. That's probably a better way to go than mine. I barely have memories of those times. But quick side note. Well, forget the side note. That's for another time.
No, go on. What were you going to say? What were you going to say?
Well, I was going to say, back then when you're, 17 years old, you know, the thing that did it for me was ecstasy, like everyone else. And this is terrible for a finance guy to say, but at 17, I figured I cut myself a break. But I remember I wanted to get into a show, and it was New Order, and somehow I got a hold of them. And they said, if you come down to the show with ecstasy, we'll let you in. And I remember that was like the time that I did ecstasy with New Order. So that was the start of it. And I don't remember what year that was, but I'll have to go back and look at that. Having said all that, I stopped all that nonsense decades ago. So.
Of course, you and me both, Les. I love it. That is fantastic. And look, I mean, it is quite a segue to go from doing ecstasy with New Order, which all of us have done, by the way, to then say, well, Les, give us the kind of, I guess, nutshell elevator pitch, if you like, of Wave Financial Group. And let's hope that the board aren't listening.
Yeah, well, they'll be bored. So Wave is fantastic. We are a RIA, which is a registered investment advisor. So we adhere to all of the regulatory concerns around the asset class. We have a couple of venture funds that we deal with and handle. We do treasury management for high net worth and protocols and create financial products. The company is doing well. We are over $1.5 billion in AUM. We were able to accomplish that in 3 years. We have really innovative kind of financial strategies. And like I said, I definitely am the outlier. I just have an interest and curiosity in new things. And, really when you look at the company, it's a lot of guys that have finance, in their background. My two co-founders, Borsai and David Seymour. David comes from venture and selling a bank to China Capital, and Ben comes from traditional finance, heading up alternative products for Merrill in Asia for about 12 years, and AllianceBernstein before that. So we have this deep kind of pedigree in finance.
Yeah, and so talk through, I suppose, what's the product offering or the
well, different products. So for instance, we just launched a NFT fund that actually follows all of the kind of regulatory guidelines and fund administration and audits required for those types of products. So that's one product. We do things like the basic access products like index funds, but we also do more clever things like an option product on top of Bitcoin wrapped in a fund structure. So they're all pretty clever products, and we go even deeper than that. Some of the guys get into the DeFi and CeFi strategies. But again, I think the place we really excel is understanding where the market's headed and trying to stay on top of what's coming next, because it changes so rapidly.
Yeah, and I was just looking at your website before, Les, and I was quite taken by what you call the Wave Whisky 2020 digital fund, the world's first tokenized whiskey barrel fund that captures the value appreciation associated with the aging of fine Kentucky whiskey. So I've seen there's a few different whiskey, I guess, tokenization projects out there, but yeah, so talk us through what the idea here is.
Well, this is Ben's baby, and I'm almost sorry that I had a little bit of help in it, because he loves this product so much, and it's the only thing anyone ever wants to talk about. The general premise of the product. So, as I came from music, and finding whiskey barrel capacity is quite difficult. The one thing I still have kind of as leftover from my music career is I manage this wonderful artist named Wynonna Judd, and have for a very long time. While I don't do the day-to-day on why she's from Kentucky, and we were able to find a nice way to find capacity for the barrels, which is actually very difficult. But the premise is, you enter at a certain price and it appreciates. So by the 6th year, you have a nice return. We've tokenized it as well, although most people don't request that. So I don't know that it's actually been tokenized, but we have the ability to tokenize it. The point really is just clever alternative products, which is completely in Ben's sweet spot. This is his baby. And I think it's done really well. So.
Yeah, very nice, very nice. Okay, well, you mentioned also, so you said basically there's a variety of funds. You've got, the index funds and actively managed funds and probably more venture, more passive funds, but you also talked about the NFT fund, right? So is that your baby, if you like?
Yeah, that is my baby. And, it made sense. Let me back up. So I lived with my father loved going to the swap meet. And I just think it was his social enjoyment.
Yeah.
And he was a collector of things, stamps, like a lot of Hungarians. And I think I collected a lot of things as well. Like I was a card collector, but sadly, I liked hockey cards. I don't know, maybe it was the hockey violence, whatever. There was something cool, kind of punk about hockey, but it never really amounted to value, but it amounted to process. I understood how to find the value in a card, and it was relatively difficult going through those old books, finding good cards, but it was just a great hobby for me. And I did the same thing with antiques and watches and, art. And my father collected art, wasn't very good of it in the sense that I don't think he ever collected anything that was really great. And that's not a slight on him, it's just the way he did it. So, as I got curious about NFTs, I had bought a CryptoPunk in 2017. I bought CryptoKitties in 18.
What did you pay for the punk in 2017?
It was nothing, and I lost the wallet actually. That had it. I can't find it.
Yeah.
But that happens. I've lost some things in crypto along the way. But I bought another one, so I feel better about it. But I just understood, I think, inherently that an NFT wasn't just a collectible piece of art. And the way I reemerged was through this site that I became an advisor for called Avagache. And these guys were brilliant. There was so much more to it than just a piece of art. An NFT could carry currency inside it. It could be a financial instrument. It could be an avatar, a PFP is your identity. And I mean, if I get going, I'm not going to stop, Andy. So I better just pause there for a second.
Well, no, I mean, that all I really want to talk to you about, Les, is NFTs. So let's just get loose. Let's get freaky for whatever time we've got remaining. We will finish off at the end of the show with a very famous crypto conversation hot take round, because you're going to be a very fun candidate for that. But in the meantime, yeah, let's just keep going on NFTs.
Yeah, so I understood that the thing I loved about NFTs, was a lot of things. I collect art now, and I knew that if I wanted to sell a painting, let's say I needed money for whatever reason, and I wanted to sell a painting, I would have to call an auction house, figure out when they're having a contemporary auction, roll the dice and see what it would sell for, or sell it to a secondary party at a loss in most cases. So I love that the liquidity in the marketplace. Because you can see what's going to emerge. You can see DEXs will emerge for trading. You can see that if someone wants to take money out of an NFT, they don't have to sell it. And I hate selling collectibles. I'm just a hoarder like that. I'm an NFT hoarder. But you'll be able to stake it. You'll be able to loan against it, borrow against it. If you take a look at MeBits, they become these augmented reality artifacts, and there's a lot of those emerging. And you take a look at all of the kind of guilds and the play to earn models that are coming. And what it really took me back to was my music days, because the great thing about music is community. I mean, we just did it at the beginning of this show. All the same bands I know, yet we've never met each other, and you live on the other side of the world. But the thing that keeps a bond is the fact that you can name a Screamadelica song, or Andy Weatherall produced it, or where you were in that moment. So that connects us. Well, the same thing connects kids in crypto, and this generation that is kind of evolving to build these really innovative products. They remind me a lot of our generation, which I think you're probably Gen X like me, because we just wanted to work. We were a little more apathetic. These guys are a little more bright.
Yeah.
But what they actually have done, I mean, you hear so often like, we're going to leave this generation, in worse shape than any other generation has ever been left. And the truth is, their response is kind of like, yeah, fuck off. And it goes back to that Wall Street bets ethos, like the audacity of, the short. It was just so amazing to me that kids were paying attention, right? So if you look at just the commonality between those kids and the kids that are creating DAOs, I mean, those DAOs are all just little economies, and they keep putting, what they're generating back into those economies in the secondary marketplaces like OpenSea. If you look at the volume, I know you want to jump in and I'll pause in a minute. If you look at the volume of what's happening is, these drops are driving kind of the ability for these economies to create wealth for these younger kids. And I'll just finish with this. My niece, I gave her an NFT. I paid about $1,300 for it. She sold it 6 days later for 12 grand. I gave her a cryptoad. I don't know what I paid for it, $300 or something on the drop. I mean, the floor on those is like 30, 40 grand. At 20, I can tell you, at 20, I might have had it, but I think most kids don't. And they're not having to rely upon others to create, this life for themselves. So I'll pause there.
No, I'm just, it's so interesting, Les, and I think you're exactly right. And in some respects, I suppose in the mainstream media, there's this narrative that this younger generation that you're talking about, it's never been harder for them because, we've got inflation and kind of house prices are out of their reach and minimum wage, and they're competing against everyone on the planet to kind of get a job. But at the same time, there's these new economies that are bootstrapping out of nowhere, and there's so much opportunity out there in the metaverse for the people that are kind of prepared to dive in and immerse themselves in this world. And there's this just incredible revolution building, I think, and man, people just aren't prepared for what's going to happen over the next decade, Les.
Well, I mean, I think you're right about that, and it's amazing to me, if you really take a look at these DAO models and how these kids have just figured it out. I mean, they're connecting value to the DAOs with tokens, and I mean, it's going to just be interesting to see what evolves and what changes, and it's impossible to follow. It's just so fast. I mean, that was one of the things that we also did a little bit different with this fund, because I understood community. We brought in this guy named Veg Surfer, that's his name. And, he is just ingrained in the community. And that's a different kind of analyst to understand what deals are coming and what deals are not coming. And we've got great advisors that come out of the same world. And when you put them with kind of finance professionals, you really get this interesting result. And going back again to the beginning of our conversation, when I was doing warehouse parties, I ended up working with this big corporate entity, and really magical things happened. And it's not unlike working at a record company and having an artist come in and say, I mean, with record companies, it didn't always work, but when it did, it was pretty magical to have that core kind of creative power connect with the ability to distribute product, which is something the artist doesn't want to get involved with anyway, but it's just necessary back then. Now it's not, with all the new technologies, and you're going to see a lot of these older industries be replaced by innovation.
Yeah, and you kind of alluded to that innovation happening so quickly, and you talk about the community aspect, and obviously community is incredibly important across the board, particularly important in NFTs, and there's incredible power in being incredible power and opportunity in a young person having that ability to effectively live in Discord, but be able to pass the market alpha, if you like, from multiple different Discord communities or across Twitter, and be able to just surf those data points and be just, you only have to be a couple of percentage points ahead of the narrative to identify where the opportunities are coming from. But man, that is a finely honed skill set in itself, I think.
That is the skill set. People ask, how you can discern what's going to be profitable, what's not going to be profitable. That's the business side. But I mean, let's not forget that it's not just about that. There is this element of support that's also important. And coming from the background of being an artist manager, you actually do care about artists. They're super passionate about what they do. And if we take a look back again to the kids and the economy, well, I mean, DeFi was just a solution to what kids were unhappy about with traditional banking. And that was the returns, and they thought they could do better, and they figured out a way to do better. And, with the kind of what's happening with Web3 and the decentralization component and how it's going to change privacy, I mean, it's all really connected to this new ethos. So if we take a look at NFTs, well, that's not really any different, is it? Galleries for a long time have taken a lot of money from artists, and at the same time acted as a filter, acted as a judge in terms of what good work may be and what good work may not be. And now what we're seeing is the ability to support artists in a different way, because there's money there now, and they can do what they want to do and not be reliant upon, the validation of a famous gallery or curator or collector. And that's the beauty of it. This is a new audience. If you listen to Noah from Christie's, the old guard that collects Warhols is very different than the new guard that buys NFTs. So they've literally created a new market.
They have indeed. All right, well, let's just get some of the final details on the NFT fund, and then love to talk just briefly about some of the different NFT projects around the world. But so I was just looking at the fund on the Wave website, Les, and it says, I think the starting investment allocations for your NFT funds, 70% to collectibles and then 30% to platforms and protocols. So yeah, just love to understand the thinking there, and anything else about the fund, how people can get involved, etc.
Well, yeah, I mean, the cool thing about the collectibles and I don't know how much I could say about because of compliance and things like that, but I guess I can do the basics. It is 70% collectibles and 30% kind of infrastructure. Look, the metaverse is something I've spent time in these days, which is really great. And you can just see where it's going. You can see what that world is going to become, and how NFTs are not just collectibles in that world, but they're going to be, I mean, in the simplest kind of way to look at it, when I put my Oculus on, my Meebit is sitting there, or my Punk is sitting there. I didn't do that, it happened. But those are going to become my identity. And as things like CyberCon VXs, become people's identities, those three-dimensional avatars are absolutely brilliant. You just get immersed in what's coming next. And I don't believe it's going to be the traditional game companies that become the big players out of the box, because I think there's going to be a risk reward component that they don't want to take the risk on anything crypto related, and everything that is being defined now in gaming has that component. It was the whole point. So when we think about Web3 and we think about kind of the metaverse as it's emerging, and then we go wider and broader, which is really the great thing about NFTs, and look at sports and fashion and sneakers, and companies like Artifacts being able to mint sneakers and virtual sneakers that match a Punk, and it's just, there's so much there. And so much opportunity to invest in these innovative businesses. I mean, back, not too long ago, I think the definition of venture was, I mean, you were investing in these companies because you had a belief. There were no earnings a lot of times. There were startups, you had to mentor them. It was a completely different skill set. You would just rely upon the team. But when you look at what's happening now, I mean, these companies are all making money. These kids are making money. And I think you're going to see the next Activision, the next, massive gaming companies obviously come out of the metaverse. So that's the other thing that we're looking at pretty closely. And there's going to be, galleries that are, well, they already are. There's gallery and there's on cyber and all of these interesting ways to display your art that will have gaming components. And if I was going to just shake it all up in a box, the thing that's really the most exciting, the thing that I've always loved about, creative work in general is the collaborative effort. I mean, when have you ever heard of a game combining banking? I mean, that's just insane to me that it works. You have games that have the banking component and it's just irreverent and there's something kind of cool about it. And I think that's where all the creativity is going to come from. And that's what we look at, all of the innovation.
Yeah, yes, indeed. And well, are there any, I mean, there's just so many projects now across the NFT space, Les. Love you just to pick out, one or two that you're either particularly impressed or inspired by, or that you're involved in, or you think are doing something quite interesting.
Well, I mean, your fellow Kiwis doing ASM is brilliant.
Yes.
Altered state machine is something I'm completely inspired by. I'll just blow through some that I love. Obviously, I love the Universe XYZ guys because that's going to change the model of how a lot of things are deployed. I think I mentioned Avagache. I think that's going to come back around. I love Cryptodes. Anything Gremplin does, just as a straight artist, just a brilliant, brilliant artist. I love Lorona. She's more of a fine artist. I mean, there's just so much that, I spend time with and kind of try to want to understand. CyberKong's VX to me are going to be one of the big things that come next. And, if you look at the CyberKong's Genesis, what they're trading at, and again, everything moves so fast. I like the fact that the cool cats are going to have milk tokens and the sup ducks have volt tokens, and they're adding these layers of complexity. That was a mouthful. That was a whole bunch of projects.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate that you did mention Altered State Machine, which of course is the Kiwi crew, and I know that you know those guys.
The Fluffs. How can I not mention the Fluffs? I love the like the
That's
Fluffs
right.
are awesome.
Yeah. And look, I think we're all waiting for our thingies to be unveiled. I think that's happening for Halloween. And of course, the unboxing for the ASM boxes, that'll be later in the year. But man, I was quite just watching the floor price on those, even though unboxing is 5 weeks away, the floor price is already 0.3. And so I think, it's taken the market a little bit to kind of get their head around what ASM is, and I think that's understandable because it is a lot to understand, and they're going to kind of unveil it in stages. But yeah, that's certainly one to watch.
Yeah, I'm actually fortunate. I got a rare and a mythical, which on drops I usually get crap every time. I get crap unless it's a really bad drop. Then I get great things. Like if it's a drop no one cares about, I'll get like the rarest thing. So I was really excited about getting a rare and a mythical ASM box. Those guys are so smart and the teams that they have are so good. And I think we're just going to see them continue to churn really interesting projects. I mean, that's what makes this so much fun. Is just sitting there and seeing the community, and NYC NFTs coming up next week. And I'm also looking forward to, what happens with some of the different chains. I mean, obviously we see what's happening with Solana. It's going to be nice to see what happens with the other chains as they start to implement, and Coinbase launches their marketplace. I mean, to say the least, this isn't going anywhere anytime soon.
That's exactly right. All right. Well, let's go to a very quick break, and then Les will come back and we'll have some fun. We'll finish off with the very famous Crypto Conversation Hot Take Round.
In today's crypto market, the team at Brave New Coin are the sector's leading builders of custom crypto indices.
BNC's powerful indexing engine draws on Brave New Coin's premium data to calculate high-frequency intraday and end-of-day indices for a wide range of index products. BNC's custom indices help you to gain exposure to the crypto assets class and track your performance against the market without having to become a stock picker. Brave New Coin's custom indices team delivers experienced consultancy, premium data, and trusted calculation. Contact BNC today to find out more.
All right, we're back and I'm with Les Borsai. Les is the Chief Strategy Officer at the Wave Financial Group, and he has headed up the NFT fund over at Wave Financial. But hey, look, Les, I like to finish each podcast just with a quick round of rapid fire crypto conversation hot takes. Are you up for it?
Probably not, and I'm probably going to fail miserably, but that's my natural self-deprecating attitude. I'll give it a whack.
Give it a whack, Les. Don't worry. All we're going to do is I'm just going to throw some hot take style questions at you. I just want quick, snappy answers, hot take style. There's no right or wrong way to play it. So let's go.
Andy, wait, what's a hot take? I've never even, you said hot take style.
Well, hot take.
I get the rules, so I'll do it.
Yeah, just whatever comes to mind, Les. All right, question one. Where do you sit on the Bitcoin maximalist to multi-coin opportunist spectrum?
Oh, Jesus. Smorgasbord, give me a little bit of everything.
Very nice. So, all right. What would you say, Les, is your firmest conviction, crypto opinion?
How about just firmest conviction, authenticity, connection, character? Does that count?
That counts, and I like that. Yep. Authenticity means a lot in this world. Reputation, everything.
Yeah.
All right, well, Bill Gates famously said we tend to overestimate what we can accomplish in 2 years and underestimate what we can accomplish in 10. So, whatever you like, Les, blockchain, crypto, DeFi, NFTs, or, rave culture, what does it look like in 10 years' time?
Probably nothing like it looked today. I like to use those kind of Bill Gates. I know it's a snap answer. Let's just say here's my answer. All of this is the foundation. We haven't even seen what's going to be built on top of it yet.
Exactly right. Well, look, on a similar note, William Gibson said that the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed. What's an example of the future being here right now, Les, but most people just aren't really aware of it?
Well, I mean, that's an easy one. The metaverse itself. I mean, I think when we talk about the metaverse, William Gibson's amazing. I was thinking back on Neuromancer the other day, as a matter of fact. It was one of the first games I ever played, like in the 80s. And I think, all of those visions that those guys had, or you look back at the cypherpunks and all that, I think it's just here. And, these immersive experiences that you can walk into now. I mean, it's just I wish I knew, the percentage of people who've had those experiences, because it can't be that much, and it's here and they don't know it.
Yeah, exactly right. Very nicely said, Les. All right, we're almost done, but it's time to zoom out, time to get a little bit weird. What do you see as the long-term future for the human race? Do you see utopia or dystopia?
I mean, a little bit of both again, isn't it? I mean, there are utopian moments, but plenty of dystopian ones as well. I mean, I don't think what in life is ever completely one-sided. I think, while we all have different opinions and different personalities, we have these different approaches. So it's not either or for me.
And finally, Les, what would you say is your favorite science fiction book, film, show, or universe?
Wow. I've never been asked that question.
Take a moment. Feel free to take a moment. Pick two.
But I'm going to tell you that if I'm thinking about like science fiction, just from the film standpoint, there was this great film, Silent Running, that I really loved. I think Bruce Dern was in it. It was in a 70s film. So I just never have thought about what other great science fiction I'm deeply connected to. I suppose, Yeah, I'm stumped. Silent Running is a good one. I pulled it out, so.
Yeah, Silent Running is good. It's a 1972 environmental themed American post-apocalyptic sci-fi film directed by Douglas Trumbull, starring Bruce Dern. Yeah, I've heard of it, but I've never seen it. It looks...
It's brilliant. Logan's Run was another one.
Yes, actually, exactly. Yeah.
That, I think a lot of people don't remember, but that was pretty brilliant as well.
Yeah, we're showing our Generation X.
Oh, I know, right?
This.
And the funny thing is those films in particular were just, it wasn't exactly light reading or light film. I'm trying to think. Clockwork Orange as well, right? Kubrick thing.
Classic, an absolute classic. Yeah.
Isn't it sad that influenced me, but it had nothing to do with where we're at today.
Yeah. Brilliant. Hey, this has been a lot of fun, Les. I've really enjoyed bantering with you today. There's nothing else to say really except hand the metaphorical microphone back to your good self, and please tell the people where they can go to find you on Twitter or wherever else you hang out, and where they should go to learn more about Wave and what you guys are building there, and go for gold.
I appreciate it. They can just reach out on Twitter, actually. Les Borsai on Twitter. That's really the best place. To me, the company and all of that stuff, it's secondary to kind of the human connection. That's more important to me. So
I love it. Awesome. Thank you very much, Les. All the best, and bye for now.
Bye, Andy.